As of late, I've been asked how do how does one perform a ritual? How does one prepare for a ritual, or basically everything that involves rituals? I normally tell them that it's got to be something that is unique to the individual. It has got to be personal for that individual. But I've been waiting and trying to figure out how to do this. How to explain this in a video that will help future Satanists, pagans, Wiccans, Buddhists, or whatever, even Christians if they wish to join in, realize this and how to do it. But it wasn't until I was just sitting here reading The Inner Temple of Witchcraft, and I realized that there's only one way to express the art form of a ritual and how to perform it. Basically, when we think of witchcraft, it is an art. It is a system based on the cycles of life. Life is change, plain and simple. Change encourages new expressions of the same patterns and energies. Change encourages creativity. Even though two witches can say the same exact words of a spell, each does it differently. Each brings her own personal intentions and inflictions. More often than not, witches would probably write their own spells, creating a more personal tradition. However, when doing a ritual, it is mostly what feels right to the practitioner. It's if you want to sit there and if you surf the web and you find a spell that kind of intrigues you, like, write it down, kind of twerk it up a bit or whatever to fit you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a good spell or a bad spell. It's just a matter of what you connect to. But like I said, more often than not, a witch is probably going to write his or her own spell, creating a more traditional, personal tradition, I guess you'd say. Each witch looks with the same principles based on the science of witchcraft, but they express it quite differently, elevating the craft to a very beautiful art form. The poetry of magic can bring a tear to the eye and evoke our highest emotions. Songs, chants, drumming, instruments, poetry, and drama are used in ritual. However, the creative expression, no one can doubt but that witchcraft is a form of art once they experience it. But if you look at it from a scientific point of view, there's physics involved. There's herbs and plants and a whole bunch of other things that can go into it, including ancient philosophies, modern cut-edge science. For an example, a witch was once explained that the theories behind spells and psychic powers was more of, how should I put this? Well, let's put it from a chemistry point of view. When studying chemistry, and probably would have pursued that field further if you didn't realize that magic hadn't inspired you to pursue it more creative. If you're the prove it to me kind of guy or woman, and not giving someone an inch unless they can back it up, well, that's a scientific fact. You got to back it up. One of my earliest teachers told me that if you're going to preach something, back it up. Okay? If you're going to do something, back it up with action. So, I mean, science, art, spirituality, it all goes into one giant thing. Spirituality is a major thing within it because of the fact that if you cannot get yourself into that alpha state of mind and open yourself up to the energies that you're trying to connect to, you're not going to get very far. If you're interested in witchcraft and want to learn science, or if you want to get into Satanism and learn everything behind that, which lately I've been getting a lot of questions about rituals from a Wiccan point of view, from a satanic point of view, from a pagan point of view. And because I've studied these areas quite extensively over the last 10 years, if not longer, I can tell you that what you put in is what you're going to get back. But you had to have that open sense, that open-mindedness to other philosophies. You can't just, how should I put this? You can't just sit there and look at a European point of view. You got to look at, the Germanic. You got to look at the Norse, the Greeks, the Egyptian point of view as well. I mean, there's philosophies around the world, including Native American magics, their rituals. You got to look at it from every point of view. And once you've done that, then you can sit down and look at what you do for rituals and find out, okay, this is what works for me. Okay, this doesn't work for me. Okay, this could work for me, but I can tweak it up so that it does work for me. You see, it's about rituals, and magic is about spinning the mystics and the ritual into a more positive point of view on what you're trying to achieve, not what somebody else is trying to achieve, but you as the individual practitioner is trying to receive. Now, while thinking about this stuff, I started thinking, this could also be used as a teaching tool because of the fact that I've studied every type of thing that I can get my hands on, from Anton Szandor LaVey to Peter H. Gilmore, Alistair Notch. Then you have Tursk Suzej. Right there you got 4 different points of view on Satanism. Okay? Then you go into witchcraft. You got, say for an example, Silver Ravenwolf, to Scott Cunningham, to Raymond Buckland. These are just a few. Right there, I mean, there's a lot of different pagans and Wiccans that actually write books these days on what their version of it is. But you got to find what works for you, and not what it is for somebody else and what it means to somebody else. Somebody like me who has taken on the role of teacher and educator, when I take on a student, it is it's a responsibility to me to make sure that you don't harm yourself or others when you get into these fields. Now, that's the difference between a practitioner and an educator. Okay? A practitioner just sits there and practices all forms of magic, all forms of the mystics, and all forms of spirituality, philosophy, sciences, all that stuff. A teacher not only has to study it, but they have to walk it, they have to talk it, you have to take responsibility for your actions, but you also got to take responsibility for the actions of others. And most practitioners will tell you, most won't tell you, but some will. A lot of practitioners today will not take that responsibility. Now, because I was a naturally born leader from birth, you can ask any one of my teachers. I had one teacher that actually told my mother, "He's taking over my class." But anyways, little humor there. But anyways, you see my point. Leadership comes naturally to some, while followers come to another. If you go to Christianity, they'll tell you that you have followers and you have leaders. You look at those who are individuals who are at the top, from the pastor to the reverend to the ushers. They don't hang out with people. They don't get that luxury because they're in a position of power. They're in a position of leadership. They've been there. They've taken on that role. So when you look at this stuff, you got to remember that when you're at the top, it is a lonely road. It is very true what they say when they say that. But when you look at the followers, some will just sit there and say, okay, I believe what you're telling me, while others will take what you say, but also go investigate it. But they don't want to take on that role of leadership. They want to be a follower, but they want to be a leader, but they don't know which way to go. So basically they just sit in the middle and don't do anything. So when you get into rituals, you got to decide what works for you. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to question, how do I do this? How do I do that? But you don't want to do it so often that you tick off the person you're asking, or you're trying to annoy them or whatever. You got to you got to be able to focus on what you need and what you want to get out of it. There comes a time when you got to stop asking and start doing. Okay? I had a woman here on Facebook. She kept asking and asking and asking. And it's like, don't you hear what I'm trying to tell you? Do you see it? Do you hear it? Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? A lot of the times, no. And she kept coming back with the same old story, same old story, same old story. Finally, I just stopped answering her. Had another one sit there and ask me and ask me and ask me. But eventually, he understood. Because, like I did with her, I broke it down into the simplest forms. Now, he understood, and he actually started doing. He started practicing, working the magic. And the more he got into it, the more he understood. Occasionally, he came up against something he needed insight on, so he come to me and asked. And I told him. Now, if I don't know something, I'll refer you to my brother. I'll send you right to him because he's been practicing this stuff a lot longer than me. Or I'll sit there and I'll ask him for you. One or the other. So, like I said, when you get into this stuff, getting into rituals, you got to look at who you're trying to contact. You got to learn, how to do it, how to perform it. But basically all aspects of ritual. The different forms of it, the different styles. Find out what works for you, not what works for other people. But you also got to consider that you have solitary rituals, and then you have a coven or a grove ritual, depending on which philosophy, religion, or faith you're in. So, I hope this has been an inspirational video. I hope you've learned a lot, and as usual, I'll make myself available to you. And I'll answer any questions you have. So, hail Satan, have a good day, and I hope you've learned a lot.